Hey, thanks everybody for joining. Welcome to the webinar joint with MasterControl and Bioforum, discussing the topic of accelerating the future of MES, reducing cost, accelerating value, and enabling real-time release. I am Katie Farley. I am VP of Product at MasterControl, focusing specifically on our manufacturing solution. So I work on the production record, EBR solution, logbooks, as well as an asset management solution that we recently acquired this year. I have the pleasure of working directly with our customer base as well as our engineering teams to help define the future of our manufacturing products here at MasterControl.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kira Clayton. I am Global Change Facilitator within Bioforum's IT, Digital and Data Forum, where I also manage the total program of work leadership team in that space as well. So very happy to be here today. Thank you for having me on.
So to start with a brief introduction of MasterControl, MasterControl is a global leader in quality and manufacturing focused on regulated industries, especially life sciences. So the vast majority of our customers are in pharmaceutical, medical devices. We have over 1,100 customers today. We have been around actually for many decades. We were founded in 1993, headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah, and our core mission has been to enable our customers to bring life-changing products to more people sooner. And as a part of this endeavor, many years ago, we noticed that there was a lot of paper on the production floor. And at that time, our customers were using existing MasterControl products in creative and interesting ways to try to solution that. By, for example, using a digital form within MasterControl and trying to have that function as a batch record. So based off of where we saw some opportunity there to optimize those processes for our customers, we released an EBR solution in 2019, a logbook solution in 2024, and have been building out more components of a modern MES in the recent past, and then as a part of our future roadmap.
Thank you, Katie. And just to give you a bit of background in terms of Bioforum as well, then, so we are a global biopharmaceutical manufacturing industry collaboration company, and we comprise of major manufacturers and their key suppliers. So people like MasterControl would be in that group of suppliers. We have over 150 different member companies within the group at the minute, spanning over 7,500 active participants, and that represents almost 98% of the biopharmaceuticals manufactured worldwide. So there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise within this space. We provide a sort of unique global collaboration, and our forums are really seen as a powerful vehicle for change within the industry. And we do bring those industry leaders and experts together to work in concert to drive results, across the wider industry, not just contain the space that we are in, which is why we're here today, obviously, to share that with a sort of an external group of people as well. So it's our goal really to provide a space that we can have one voice for the industry. So within the Bioforum community, we have these 11 different forums. Today, I am here presenting on behalf of the MES of the Future team within the Bioforum Digital and Data Forum. Our work stream is comprised of digital supply partners. So MasterControl, for example, are one of our member companies. And we also have a large group of manufacturers and CDMOs. This work stream was kicked off in 2021, and the team have produced a significant amount of work and guidance within the MES space since then, with 2 papers being released this year and another one on the way in early 2026. And as I said, what we're trying to do here is really create one voice for the industry so that we can really connect across that whole network. In terms of the MES of the Future team, they've created 6 publications in total. You can go onto our website and download any of those documents for free. These outputs are there to help with vendor selection, to understanding what you need in your MES from a data perspective. We talk about how to integrate MES with other systems. we've talked about moving MES from on-prem onto the cloud, and our latest paper is what we're here to talk about today, which hopefully will provide some direction into how we can resolve the top 7 industry problems that are continuing to plague our industry. So if you are interested in any of the guidance from this team, QR codes on the screen that you can, use now, download any of those documents. As I said, it's for free, and get involved in the conversation, I suppose. So, and then there is a business value playbook that is coming soon in 2026, and if I can, I might touch a little bit more on that later. That's not the focus, obviously, of today's webinar. So what we're going to look at now is the future vision that was actually outlined in this paper. It's called the Industry Challenges and Enablers paper. It's ambitious but necessary, and I think it calls for a fundamental shift in how MES is designed, how it's deployed, and how it's maintained. We think that by embedding lifecycle management into our operations and moving away from those disruptive upgrades, that maybe we can reduce costs, complexity, time to value realization, etc. This vision really supports a broader MES adoption from smaller sites right up to more mature sites. It doesn't prescribe solutions, but it does outline enablers that could help shift the industry towards that more agile, modular, cost-effective MES in the future. And each of these areas does need further exploration and collaboration to move the needle. So by no means are we saying this paper has the answers, but it will definitely kickstart us on that journey, I suppose. And so it really serves as a strategic framework and a call to action for transforming manufacturing execution systems in the pharmaceutical industry. So just to put into context, how many people have delivered this paper? There's 29 contributors listed on the paper at the minute across 17 different companies. There's a couple of other organizations that are still working with their legal teams to get their name on it so that their contributions can also be recognized. So I'm sure you can agree that there is a huge amount of knowledge and expertise that went into this paper. And I suppose we should take a minute, Katie, to thank the rest of the team for everybody who did participate in this to help drive that synchronized change across the industry. And obviously, as you will notice in the top right-hand corner, is the MasterControl team as
Absolutely.
well. So,
It's been a great collaborative effort for sure.
yeah, thank you very much, Katie. It was great to have you join the forum as we were kicking off this piece of work that I think really is going to be a vehicle for change in our work stream and what it is that we're trying to create in 2026 as well. So on to the good stuff. There are 7 challenges that are still hindering our industry at the moment. And that paper is written from the perspective, obviously, of manufacturing executions. Like, where they're not on the screen, don't worry, they're coming. It's written from the perspective of manufacturing execution systems, but all of those learnings can really be applied across different areas of the manufacturing system. So MES, LIMS, ERP, QMS, etc. You basically just simply replace the word MES with this paper with any other system, and it will still make sense. And I think that, Katie can probably agree, every company is still struggling with one, if not multiple, of these key challenges. So we have integration complexity still. We have disconnected systems. We have difficulty to add on new functionality. We have long implementation timelines still. We have very high cost of total ownership. And there's also challenges still with data extraction, and that's become more and more obvious as we move into that AI environment. And then finally, last but not least, we also have the management of downtime. Planned and unplanned downtime is still a big challenge for us. And you'll see on the right-hand side here, we have a set of visions that are associated with these different challenges. And the challenges are very closely tied together. So challenge 1 links to challenge 2 and challenge 6, maybe challenge 3 links to challenge 4, etc., etc. So they are very much sort of all overlapping and intertwined. And today, I suppose we're going to focus on some of these challenges. So I suppose, Katie, is there any of the 3, of the 7 in particular that maybe impact your customers, on what you do at MasterControl that are maybe more relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the 3 that we're gonna focus on today. So that's the high cost of ownership and delayed time to value. So that's been a focus for us as a vendor here, disconnected systems and fragmented batch review and the impact to these organizations' ability to get their product out the door. And then last, we're gonna talk about significant downtime, looking at both planned and unplanned. So talking not only about the existing challenge that this presents, but also looking at the future vision and talking through enablers and what are some of the solutions that we can actually look to as we move into the future.
Let's get into challenge number 1. So challenge number 1 is all about high cost and delayed to value. This is everything that's basically associated with those implementations in terms of cost. And I frequently hear from Biopharm members that there is huge difficulty still in demonstrating clear and immediate return on investment for MES systems. And that's creating an organizational reluctance to commit to the necessary funding. I've heard that as recent as yesterday from some of our leadership team. I do believe that our business value playbook that I sort of mentioned earlier will help with this activity when it's released in 2026 because it explains all about how you measure business value and how you can sort of go down that business case to really let other people in your organization understand how MES can really bring a lot of value to your organization outside of financial return. Due to long deployment cycles, expensive infrastructure, there's complex validation requirements, etc. MES is frequently perceived as a cost center, and there's many components that make up total cost of ownership. To make it easier to navigate, we split these into 3 key areas within the paper, and each of them have their own list of contributors. So, Katie, do you want to maybe give everybody a bit of information about what's covered under these components?
Yeah, let's do that. Yep. And to unpack it a bit further as we talk about the cost, it's not just the initial price tag, but it's really the cost that we see stretch across the entire MES lifecycle, not just from the implementation, but through the adoption and then kind of the ongoing change control and management of that process. So if we look at implementation, as was just mentioned, of course, the upfront costs are very significant as these companies are looking at pretty extensive investments in infrastructure, complex licensing models, big validation workloads, which is something we're going to talk about in more detail here. And there's rarely, unfortunately, a plug and play experience. A lot of times, each deployment really feels quite bespoke, as some of our member companies put it and our customers put it. No 2 MES rollouts are ever exactly the same, and that's sort of part of the problem to be addressed here. So, some of the things that this ends up driving is specialized MES expertise. So, then you need the people who have the knowledge to build out and maintain these systems. And this expertise can be scarce and costly on its own. And so, ultimately, what we end up seeing from an implementation perspective is what starts as maybe a 12-month plan can roll into a multi-year journey before we have these sites actually operational. From an adoption perspective, the costs don't necessarily stop at this point, but they do start to shift. Change management and end user training can be a pretty consistent effort, especially when systems aren't intuitive or role friendly, and especially when you're waiting a long time in between upgrades, which is something we're going to talk about more later. That's going to result in an even bigger delta of change that you're having to deal with, train your users, validate, etc. Again, this leads to a lot of organizations really leaning on those super users or experts, creating some bottlenecks and burnout risks. And because the tools often aren't designed for flexibility, even small changes can result in some of these painful things that we're talking about. And then as we look at lifecycle management, each vendor-driven upgrade cycle can introduce new validation work, retraining, change control, everything that goes along with that. And legacy systems also require heavy support, custom maintenance, and over time, these costs really start to accumulate, making MES ownership one of the highest digital expenses in manufacturing and where it starts to be seen, like Kira mentioned, really as a cost center versus really helping everyone at the organization really understand and see firsthand the value that a functional MES solution can provide. So when we're talking about high cost and delayed time to value, it's not just a budgeting issue, although that's certainly a big part of the problem, but it's really structural as well, which is where you see the industry and Bioforum and MasterControl as a part of that, really calling for configurable, modular, or scalable solutions that are going to reduce some of this burden that we're talking about here.
Fingers crossed. Yes, definitely. And then I think just on this, obviously that's the challenge. That's the things that we are really struggling with at the minute. But the vision here really is to reduce that total cost of ownership by 50% to accelerate our time to value realization from years down to months instead. As Katie said, it does take a long time sometimes for these things to go through with upgrades, etc. It's very resource intensive. Um, it does impact downtime for production, etc. as well. And these are all
I like what you
considerations.
said. I liked what you said initially that these goals are aggressive but necessary, which I think is absolutely true.
Mhm.
This is an aggressive goal, but I would also add that it's possible. I think that's an important point as well with some of these enablers that we're going to talk about. We believe that there is a path to actually get here, although it does seem quite aggressive.
Yeah, exactly. So, although each of these areas will need further exploration and collaboration to move the needle, of course, this vision is just what we want to focus our efforts on in the next, year to 2 years, even as part of the MES of the future team. This particular vision is what we're focusing on in the next few months. And we really do believe that we can implement drive change with these enablers, and it could make a huge difference to the overall total cost of ownership. Our enabler section is actually split into 4 buckets within this area. So if we talk about standardization and harmonization first, this enabler really focuses on creating that consistency across sites by harmonizing your process master data, developing reusable templates, etc., by maybe establishing governance structures, putting in some clear rules for customizations, and really hoping that organizations can reduce the bespoke configurations to really drive efficiency in the space. And we think that standardization does lay the foundation for a scalable, cost-effective deployment. We also have embedded lifecycle management in here with quite a few enablers under it. So this is currently a sort of a bit of a fiasco in the industry at the minute. And every time we want to do an update, there is a lot of validation, there is a lot of downtime. As we mentioned before, it can take months to years to do an upgrade because you have that technology stack upgrade, you have your application upgrades, you also have infrastructure upgrades. So instead of disruptive upgrades, this enabler starts to promote continuous, low friction updates through modern architectures like modular or cloud native platforms. And it supports that shift from reactive lifecycle management to an embedded seamless evolution instead, where you're only upgrading when there is a clear business value or risk mitigation required. Katie, do you maybe want to provide some context as to how it might fit in with what you're doing on MasterControl? And you could take us through the last 2 points on this as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think one of the things that comes to mind is your discussion of reusable templates, which you see in the automation and tooling as well, that point about standardized templates and vendor provided tools. There's really an opportunity to embrace whether it's vendor provided configuration packages or standardized templates, or even templates that you can create and utilize as an organization across multiple products and lines. So that could be a line clearance form that's similar for a lot of products being manufactured on the same line, or it could be formulation process for a line of products that's very similar. The ability to be able to create these standardized templates and then use them across all of the processes that need them is going to be a huge time savings from a configuration perspective, from a validation perspective, and just time savings. So that means when you need to make an update, you're making it in one place, you're not making it in 100 places. So lots of value there that I think is important for both manufacturers and for the MES vendors to really embrace.
And in this section as well about automation and the It's not actually listed here, but in the paper it talks about encouraging people to explore AI-assisted authoring and integrated product management as well, um, because we're trying to reduce that reliance on very scarce MES resource in terms of our expertise. But note that we've said explore AI-assisted tools. We haven't been as explicit in what they are yet, and what it is that we think people should target first as their AI use cases. There's so much scope in that one piece of work that could really bring a lot of value, but it's making sure that it's fit for purpose for your organization and that you really have assessed that this is the right thing to do in that space. Um, Risk management then.
Yeah, great points so far. Yeah, I'll talk about risk management in a little more detail here. So another key enabler here is that risk based validation effort. So making sure that you're able to focus your validation effort where it's really going to have an impact for product quality and patient safety rather than treating every single change equally. Many vendors, MasterControl included, offer a lot of pre-validated content these days and risk-based validation packages, which are of course going to help streamline this process. In the case of MasterControl, we have our VXT tool or our patented validation excellence tool that for each of our upgrades that are available to our customers, we provide detailed information about the technical risk of that change and then create a workflow and process for customers to go through and then self-evaluate how that change actually impacts them and then create recommendations about how they take a risk-based approach for validation. That's been a huge enabler for us as we've moved the vast majority of our customers to the cloud and enabling them to take those regular updates. So this approach, as well as other risk-based validation approaches, are going to reduce that overhead and allowing teams to focus and utilize their resources on the testing that actually is going to have an impact on the important aspects. And this is going to help with clear ROI projections, reduce upfront investment to make the MES more financially viable, which is a big push in this initial challenge as well.
Definitely. And are you seeing a lot of people shifting away from CXP to CSA types of validation instead then?
Yeah, definitely. And especially in our case, as we do have a cloud-based solution, we have regular upgrades. So that's been a really key element of our ability to support our customers and reduce the burden on them as we work with them to get through these quarterly or annual upgrades.
Brilliant, brilliant. There's so many people that want to do it, that want to make that shift to CSA that are just struggling with how to do it. There's not that many companies I know at the minute that have successfully transferred everything over to that style of, thinking about risk management validation, but so many companies are looking towards that and, want to gain knowledge on it. So, yeah, I think it's great that you guys are supporting your clients and that shift over. Brilliant. Okay, so what do we have next? Just to put this in a different context, then I suppose this sort of shows like the different layers that we have of software and hardware and processes. So the main message on this slide is to say that I suppose we focus most of our efforts on these bottom blocks, these bottom three, and they are the most visibly costly. So we spend millions of euros on these three boxes, or millions of pounds or dollars, and we try to make it our business as efficient as possible, but you still have zero business benefit because what unlocks your value is your expertise in in the process application and how you get the best out of your MBRs, for example. You need to know how you can get the best out of that to activate that business benefit. So, for example, if your quality team doesn't understand the benefit of your MES, you're never going to be able to maximize that value. So what we've talked about before, and just to put it into context here, is um, if we put standardization, harmonization on the screen, it's really in this area of how do we get the best out of expertise and process application using standardization, harmonization, and helping with that ownership of what's quality, what's manufacturing, and how can we stop working in silos and start to work together. The next bucket is the embedded life cycle one that we mentioned, and that really is the bottom three. So of course they are very, very important. It's just that they're not the only three things that we need to look at. And then the points Katie took us through with the automation tool is more so around that the application side, connectivity, the operating systems, and historically things like lifecycle management, etc. It's been a bit of a nightmare with cost and time requirements. We've already made the investment 5 years ago. Now you're having to do it again. Sometimes it's easier to install a whole new system rather than update an existing one. Um, so you really want to try and I suppose introduce automation things as soon and as much as possible, and use AI when it makes sense, which is sort of what I mentioned earlier. And then risk management just goes across the whole thing. How can we simplify it and make it easier? That's what your risk management's all about. So hopefully that lets everybody see how that fits in the structure of our organizations, what we were talking about in terms of total cost of ownership, because it is all linked throughout. You'll see, no matter what it is that we talk about in this webinar today across the different challenges, everything that we talk about with standardization, harmonization, lifecycle management, automation, tool and risk management, it comes out in every single challenge that we have because it's embedded throughout it.
Yeah,
So
that's
just
great points. I think we often think of this really as just a technology play, but as you just talked about, and we'll talk about a little bit here, there's also a lot of kind of cultural aspects to harmonization, not only of processes, but also of people and how people work together. So this is really looking at all aspects.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, people are so, so, so important. I'm sure we will come to that again at the end. So challenge three then in the paper, although it's the second challenge we are going through, it's challenge three on the list, is disconnected systems and fragmented batch review. And challenge three is really all about the inefficiencies and risks associated with disconnected systems, which we still see across our manufacturing environments today. There's still a lot of disconnected sites and silos within them. As we know, batch release processes in many pharmaceutical manufacturing environments is significantly delayed by the fragmented and manual quality review practices that we have. And our data is often inconsistently formatted. It's scattered across multiple platforms from them to LIMS, to QMS, historians, etc. It's making it really difficult to perform comprehensive and efficient review when there are so many frequent manual data entries that are required and reviews as well. We don't have a common language at the minute to represent our manufacturing data, but I know that organizations are becoming increasingly more familiar with the use of ontologies and what benefits they can bring. Katie, I suppose there's a question here. So, what are you seeing as the challenges in this area? What do you see as the impact of that from your perspective?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges we see actually is still a lot of paper. So we say probably about 70% of life science manufacturing is remaining on paper. Could be a little more, could be a little less, but ultimately, because of a lot of the challenges that Bioforum has outlined, we found that traditional MES systems, in a lot of ways, just haven't been a fit across the board, which is why we're seeing so many folks remaining on paper. So when we're talking about um, connected systems, of course, we want to connect our systems, but you also have to take a look at what is the actual first step. So if you still have a lot of your production process occurring on paper, well, you may have automation in some pockets and you have an ERP system, there's still a lot of room for optimization there. So although it sounds a little bit outdated, it is unfortunately still a reality for a lot of organizations. And most of the customers, not all of them, but most of the customers that we work with for our manufacturing products are actually coming from paper. So definitely something we see. And this isn't just small companies or startups. This is something that we see across the board, actually.
Some very, very large organizations that are still working on paper. I've even had conversations this weekend as yesterday about this and the loss of batches and things like that from very simple human error mistakes that could have been avoided by having electronic batch record, for example, which is it seems like such a low hanging fruit thing that you could introduce into your organization to save so much time and money. and cost avoidance.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the impact of the things that we were just talking about. So, one is you have an increased risk of transcription errors. So, when data is transferred manually between systems, or in some cases between paper and systems, LIMS, ERP, MES, basically you have every touch point introducing some level of risk. And it's not just potentially extra work or some quality issues that need to be corrected later. It can also directly impact the product quality and the related compliance. So this is a big deal. We also see that quality teams are reviewing every transaction instead of focusing on exception. So basically, 100% review of 100% of records, regardless of if there are actually any issues that are present. So this prevents quality from acting as a strategic partner. We just talked about this concept of harmonization across folks within an organization. And I think this is an example where, unfortunately, quality is really seen as a bottleneck to production instead of being a partner, as they're spending a lot of time essentially chasing folders instead of being able to do that strategic collaborative work. It also prevents the adoption of automated quality checks and real-time release when systems aren't connected, and especially when they're on paper. This is just really out of the question, unfortunately. You can't automate what you can't access, and so the result is a lot of missed opportunity. And then the last point here is fragmented workflows delay product release and reduce operational agility. So each handoff between systems or paper is going to create a pause where data needs to be exported, verified, updated. So in a disconnected landscape, every integration point is a potential bottleneck instead of being a potential point of optimization and automation when you have those connections. So, as we look at the cost of disconnected systems, not just inefficiency, but lost agility, higher compliance risks, and ultimately a slower path to market, taking more time to get products out the door, which, as we're seeing, a lot of products are patient specific. There's lots of folks, individuals who are waiting on these critical medications. And so, this does really have an impact when we see weeks, in some cases months, to release products post-production.
It's a really great point, especially whenever we have new modalities with like the cell gene therapy space, that those products are required, for individual patients on a very, very quick turnaround basis. So if you don't have digital systems and you have those fragmented workflows and quality teams having to review everything, it's so much harder, to your point, to get that medicine to patients quicker, which is why we're all here in the first place. Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely. A lot of these are really time sensitive too.
Mm.
We have customers that have less than a 24-hour turnaround time for, or even shorter in some cases, like radiopharmaceuticals, from the time that they finish production to actually get it into a patient.
Mhm.
You don't have a lot of time. So this is super important.
Yep, exactly. Okay, and then the enablers for this then, the vision, I suppose, really should start with is that we really want to see quality by design, review by exception, and automated release. And we want to see that time to release drop by 90%. And I know that that sounds really ambitious, but the industry consensus and the consensus within our group is that that is possible. And if we want the right changes in mindset, to Katie's earlier point, there is a big people and culture change shift here as well as the technology that's required to do so. We do feel that that is a realistic goal. That is not a finger in the air sort of metric that we came up with in this group. So just to take you through some of those enablers of things that we think, can help move the needle towards that. The first one we have on here is about integrated quality controls. So, this is really shifting review to release to a design to trust mindset instead. So, looking at the automation of CPP and CQA checks, which I know some companies are actually working on towards already today. So, we're already seeing a shift there. System integration really does give you access to your key critical data, as Katie mentioned, and including those automated or automatic checks within your system help. If you start small, can really help to build trust in system-led decisions, which in turn will improve your data integrity, your compliance. It will allow for shifts towards using AI, for example, as well, and things when you're starting to build that trust up in your organization. We also talk a lot in this paper about MES-centric data integration. So real-time access to critical data to enable review by exception, batch release cycles. And this is something that all manufacturers that we work with want. There is a limited number that have achieved this and, and that are now actually working on trying to reduce the number of exceptions rather than introducing review by exception, which is amazing to see. And that's some of the sort of shared knowledge and stories that we get to hear within the biopharm space. And those companies are being, we've seen as sort of like lighthouses to see what is possible so that we can show other senior managers like this is something that is achievable. Here is the impact of that. We can start to see people then shifting towards it. And something as simple as a review by exception can really make such a change, especially when it comes to total cost of ownership as well. But um, we really need this enabler of quality by design and connected systems to implement that. It can also support with audit readiness as well due to the data accessibility. I suppose, Katie, is there any thoughts from your perspective on trust in system-led decisions? Like, are you seeing much resistance with this among the clients in MasterControl, and are you working to enable that feedback section process?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do see resistance, especially as we look at quality review. A lot of times, especially at larger organizations, there are folks or even entire groups whose job it is to review batch records or to review paper batch records, or they could be electronic as well. And so when you tell those people, hey, now you need to spend only 10 or 20% of the time that you were doing that, this is really going to speed up your process. There's, I think, a little bit of fear and self-preservation that we tend to see where although the tools exist, where we don't always see the level of adoption that we would like to see of things like review by exception. And I think some of that is helping to facilitate trust in the system so that there is a trust that the system is going to correctly surface the exceptions, that the recipes and the processes have been configured correctly and appropriately to surface those exceptions. And then also just helping people understand that when we're not spending time on these non-value add activities like chasing paper, pulling production folks off the line to update a step or add a note, that really enables these people to focus on more value add activities that are more strategic and are really going to help advance the organization. I think there's a lot better things for quality professionals to be doing than
Mhm.
reviewing every page or every entry within a production run.
And you do hear that from the biomanufacturers in our group that it's not a case that they're trying to reduce headcount. They are very much trying to shift them to more value added activities and through integration between different systems and introducing AI and things like that. It's just that they won't have to continue to hire as many in the future because they'll be more efficient at their jobs and you can work on, yeah, things are maybe a little bit more interesting than just flicking through pages, trying to spot the problem areas and review those deficiencies in the batch for sure. So
Mhm.
another enablers on here, Katie, do you want to take us through what your thoughts
Let's
are on the automatic
Yeah,
batch
let's do
record
that.
closure?
So, yeah, talking about automatic batch closure, obviously this is sort of a North Star for a lot of organizations, like was just mentioned. And once we have connected systems and harmonized data, that's where we can really start to make steps towards this objective. It's going to eliminate manual data entry with fully integrated systems. And like we talked about, not just reduces the human error, but frees up valuable time from these strategic people to do things that are more value add to the organization. We want to see ultimately zero touch disposition. So when all that data is captured electronically and verified in real time, it can move from a manual process to an automated process, which is exciting. I do want to say though, it is important to acknowledge where you are at and what is the next step. So going from reviewing everything to automatic release, that's a pretty big step. I think review by exception is a good thing to focus on if that's not something that's happening already at your organization. Review by exception, as I'm sure everybody knows, it's going to aggregate all of the information of interest so that you're no longer having to go through each process kind of line by line or entry by entry, and is able to pull things out like any deviations, temperatures that have been out of range, any notes that have been left so that you can review, really eliminating the need. And of course, the impact is reducing release times. We have seen with the review by exception capabilities that we provide for our manufacturing customers, we have seen review and release times reduced by 90%, which is amazing. Um, Also, improvements in on-time delivery and operational efficiency and inline and automated testing. So when you have the data being captured real time, the in-process quality verification is going to reduce the need for all of that checking and verifying that's happening post-production. And then the last point in the enablers is modernizing your quality framework. So, a lot of times we see that current SOPs and the validation processes and models were more built for a manual or paper based process, and those are going to need to evolve as well. So, our standard operating procedures sometimes are need to be written for a digital environment, which can involve some level of change management. And we do see that regulators are increasingly open to automation, encouraging automation, but of course, that means organizations have to show that they have controls in place to ensure that these systems are reliable, validated, and transparent. And then this is also going to help drive consistency across sites and help with scaling, ensuring that quality review processes are going to work the same everywhere. So these enablers around review by exception, connecting systems, automated batch release are really what turn a lot of the vision that we're talking about into a reality. And we are seeing a lot of good movement in this direction, and a lot of folks being very open to addressing these new opportunities when it comes to product release.
For sure. And we can see as well here how clearly, especially these last two bullet sort of sections of the enablers links back to the original total cost of ownership challenge that we talked about earlier, because we mentioned a lot about the risk management approaches, the validation approach, et cetera, et cetera. So they're very closely linked, isn't that right? So challenge number five, this is the last one that we'll go through today. So this one is really about significant downtime, planned and unplanned. So what we're really trying to achieve here, or sorry, the problems that we're having here is that we have a lot of planned MES updates requiring really likely full system shutdowns and the unplanned outages disrupting operations without warning. So Katie, why don't you take us through this in a bit more detail from your perspective?
Yeah, let's talk about this. This is a pretty substantial pain point today. So for planned downtime, these can be full system shutdowns that are required for any major upgrade, sometimes any upgrade at all. Um, and we also see that the windows can be pretty long because these systems lack modularity and the ability to kind of pinpoint this is where the upgrade and change is taking place. So only this portion of the system is unavailable. A lot of times it's just the whole thing is unavailable. And along with that, there tends to be limited rollback options when something goes wrong. This also makes the validation burden extend even further as organizations are often waiting for requalification or data integrity checks post upgrade. And then as a result, the adoption of new capabilities is delayed and innovation slows, which this is a really unfortunate one. So as a software vendor, MasterControl, we are constantly innovating, building new features that are focused on improving processes, adding new capabilities, making the lives of our end users better and easier. And so we certainly don't want to see a resistance to taking these upgrades and making changes in the products because organizations end up missing out on a lot of really valuable updates, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
As we look at unplanned, these are, of course, the unexpected outages. These are going to have a huge impact and are going to interrupt, in most cases, are going to end up interrupting batch execution and can put the product at risk. Skilled personnel are going to end up getting diverted to just firefighting and recovery instead of value add activities. And then, of course, you're going to see the confidence in the MES drop where users are going to start to hesitate to trust the system, which isn't what we want at all. If we look at a recent real world example, some of you may be aware or may have been impacted by a major AWS outage that was just last month in October of this year. It was a DNS failure that took out I think it was the entire US East region. So that was pretty impactful. And some of our member companies actually brought this up. So I think this incident just illustrates how a single failure can cascade. And this topic of downtime, both planned and unplanned, really isn't theoretical. It does happen. So it's really important to think about ways to mitigate this risk.
And that the AWS one was mentioned by a few of our team members, like that wasn't it on the MES future
Mhm.
call? Some people impacted, some not by that, but it can cause concern across the group for sure. So on this one, then we have our future vision, which is near zero disruption for operations, which maybe seems again somewhat ambitious, especially whenever we're lumping the unplanned downtime into that group as well, not just the planned one. But maybe it does sound idyllic, but since we've been starting to look into this initially, we can see updates from supply partners like yourselves in this space. And I know that many of the members of the MES of the Future team are working towards this goal. I don't think anybody's achieved near zero downtime yet, but it is an aspirational goal, of course. Our paper has a number of enablers in this section, as I'm sure you can imagine, because it is quite a big area. So we talk about like decoupled operation management functions, so allowing for isolated updates to specific modules without having to off that core MES function, hopefully then reducing risk and downtime. We talk about out of the box solutions with minimal customization to simplify upgrades and validation as well by reducing the bespoke configurations that we have and really enabling the reuse of vendor documentation, which you mentioned earlier as well, Katie. We also talk about closer collaboration with supply partners, of course. We really want to align with those update cycles, we enable their modular rollouts and improve the vendor responsiveness during planned and unplanned events. But I think we're going to focus on a few other ones today. So, Katie, why don't you take us through, from your perspective, the four we've got on the screen here: cloud-based SaaS MES platforms, risk-based validation, automated validation setup, and the technology stack compatibility.
Cool. Yep, let's do that. Yeah, lots to unpack here. And of course, there's more information in some of the white papers that we talked about earlier, but we'll just pull out a couple here to focus on in more detail for a couple minutes here as we wrap up. So, the first one is cloud-based MES. So, this is really important to facilitate this vision. This is an important enabler. Modern infrastructure like cloud-based deployment is going to remove the dependency on single on-premise deployments, which are still pretty common today, and is going to enable more scalability and resilience by design. So an example of that might be automatic failover across regions. So when that's implemented, those organizations may not have been impacted by the AWS outage. If it was just the East region, there would be the ability to switch to another region. Cloud vendors are going to provide service level uptime guarantees, and then hopefully they should be also doing automated monitoring so that they a lot of times have the ability to know about an issue even before you do as a consumer of their products and have the ability to address that really quickly and effectively. And this is going to help, of course, advance that vision of reducing the unplanned downtime and increasing confidence in system reliability. The next one is around risk-based validation and automated validation setup. So we do want to focus on risk and impact here, not blanket requalification. So vendors, again, are more and more providing pre-validation updates and documentation packages, allowing manufacturers to more heavily rely on what's being provided by the vendor versus feeling the need to take all of that upon themselves. And then the last is technology stack compatibility. So open modular architectures are going to ensure compatibility across the various business critical systems, MES, LIMS, ERP. And then APIs and standardized data models are going to help simplify upgrades and integrations. There's also a lot of really great technology today that is going to have an impact on the ability for cloud providers, for example, to reduce the downtime that is a part of their upgrade process. So an example of that is what we call a blue-green deployment strategy that we're seeing more and more folks embrace, including MasterControl, which is going to basically allow you to transition really seamlessly between versions. So you'll have your new environment, which is the green, running in parallel with the live system. Blue, this can allow validation even before cutover. And then the other great thing is if an issue arises, it's able to instantly revert back to the stable environment with no downtime and essentially no downtime for that upgrade as well. So really exciting advancements in technology as well that are going to help organizations be able to reduce both planned and unplanned downtime.
I really think that that connection between the vendors and the biomanufacturers is so key and critical to this as we do see those shifts towards risk-based validation and automated setups, etc. It's definitely it takes two to tango for this, I suppose, in order for us to achieve this goal. And I think that's maybe the same for a lot of the challenges that we have here, that there is a lot of requirement for us to work better together between the vendors and biomanufacturers in this space or the CDMOs as well. So thank you, Katie, for taking us through that. I think that's maybe all we have time for today in terms of what's in the paper. And this really is just a quick taste of those different seven challenges that are in the industry at the minute and enablers where we see the industry heading with those future visions. I suppose we should ask if there's any questions from the people online.
So it looks like we do have a couple of questions. I think we'll have time just for one or two. So the first question is, what's it like to be a member of Bioform? And I think we can speak to this both as a member company and then as a manufacturer. And then what other areas is Bioform focused on?
Mhm. Well, if I'll go first to tell you what other areas that Bioform are focused on. To give you a chance to think about what it's like to be a member of Bioform, Katie. Um, we in the IT Digital and Data Forum, we don't obviously just talk about MES of the future. We have a lot of program work ongoing with data enablement for AI validation as well, which is obviously quite key to things that we're talking about at the moment. And there's a lot of discussion on that in the regulatory world as well. We have a program on QC Lab of the Future. We have disconnected. We have digital integration between sponsor and CMO, sorry. As well. It's a very big program of ours. And we're recently launching a new piece of work on tech transfer. So it's called Digital Development Launch. And that's a big interest as well to the MES of the Future team. They've actually helped that team produce their vision statement for this with a lot of insights that we actually were going to put in this paper and we give it to that team instead. So there's a huge program of work that's in this space. And I suppose there are some key trends that are coming up in the future. We might be doing a digitally native workforce piece of work. And, obviously there's ongoing interest within that AI space, but I think we have that fully covered with the foundational work with the data enablement team and the AI validation one.
Yeah, lots of interesting topics. And to answer the other part of the question, so MasterControl has been a member of Bioform. I think we're coming up on about a year.
Mhm.
And we had been, I told Kira in the past, we'd been following and kind of had been fans of the MES of the Future paper for many years prior. So it was exciting to officially join and start partaking in the discussions. So I mentioned earlier, I'm in product management, responsible for the roadmap for the product. So there's really no better place to be than with a group of biomanufacturers, hearing them talk through, what are some of the challenges that they're facing? How do we collaborate together between the vendors and the manufacturers to create solutions that are going to help address those problems? So it's been a great experience so far, and we're really looking forward to continuing. I think MasterControl is going to be joining a handful of more work streams, and just really, really a great opportunity to collaborate together as software providers with the member companies. And it's not just MasterControl, there's obviously other software providers there as well, which is a really unique opportunity to essentially work with and collaborate with competitors and knowing that we all do have a shared vision of advancing the industry. So that's been great.
I know there's a manufacturer here, so to speak, but from talking to them very recently about this, they've also said that some of the best value that they get out of being a member of Bioform is simply having the conversations about these topics and understanding that everybody does have the same challenges and they are aligned, that they're all working towards the same things, and sometimes just getting that sense check or to my point earlier about review by exception, to see somebody else doing it and to be able to use that in your organization to leverage a decision to pursue, an idea that might seem a bit mad to the people in your own organization, but to be able to show a proof of concept sometimes can be just really, really good for them to have that open network as well. And they love collaborating with the vendors, they really do.
Absolutely. Awesome. Okay, I think that is all that we have time for. I really appreciate everyone's time and interest. I think we just have maybe a couple wrap up slides here and we will call it.
Yes, I suppose just to say, if you are interested in what Katie and I talked about today, and you want to know a little bit more about those enablers and other challenges that we didn't get to talk about, you can scan the QR code and download the document for free off the Bioform website. And it does have a full list of, who contributed to the document, companies they were. So if you're in one of those companies, go and talk to the authors and contributors of the paper for some more insights to how you can get involved with the Bioform team.
And if you would like to learn more about Master Control's connected platform, both our manufacturing and quality products, here's email for you as well as a link to our website. So thanks everyone for your time and interest, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.